So good evening from Colombo and good morning, good afternoon to everyone else joining us from all parts of the world. It's definitely a pleasure to be here, and we've had such a great session so far. Hello to everyone joining us from Facebook. So this is our first panel discussion. So just to let you all know, this is the first panel discussion under the Global Youth Forum that we've been having, and we have such a great panel to start with. We'll be talking on initiating climate action, and we have 4 very dynamic individuals, and I would actually call them friends. Like everyone here are friends, and we've met so many times virtually and in person, and it's always a great pleasure to see you all back again. And following this, we will have our first breakout group for the development of the project proposals. So just very briefly, I'm not going to speak for long, but very briefly just to run you through the speakers today. We have Dr. Bremde Lindo, who is from Worldview Impact. He is an environmentalist, economist, social entrepreneur, founder, CEO. And once you start here listening to him, he's much, much more than that. I think there's more, there are many hats that Bremde wears. And we also have Chibizi Ezekiel, who's from Strategy for Youth Network for Development, and who's also very excitingly the 2020 Goldman Environmental Prize recipient for Africa. We have Aisha Niaz, advocate for climate resilience. We have Rafael Potselber, political outreach, Pro-Witch International. So very familiar faces for everyone at SLYCAN Trust. Thank you very much for joining and taking the time to be here and continuously engage with us. So with that, I will stop speaking, and Shibizi will be speaking first. Thank you very much, and we look forward to everyone's engagement. Shibizi, you're muted, by the way.
All right, thank you, Sani. I hope my screen can be seen now.
Yes, it can be seen.
Okay, let me just. Okay, so good afternoon from Ghana because it's just 2:30 p.m. here. So I'm happy to be part of this important meeting or forum to also share my thoughts on initiating youth in climate action. So basically, I'll be sharing some thoughts and some ideas how young people can involve in climate action. But before then, I just want to share briefly what we do as an organization. So I work with the Strategic Youth Network for Development, which is basically a youth-oriented NGO that focuses on promoting youth inclusion in the governance of our natural resources and environmental sector. We also convene the Youth in Natural Resources and Environmental Governance Platform, which we call the Youth NRE platform. So the platform basically is a space where young people come together to share their experiences on climate actions or other environmental actions, and also to create the opportunity, for joint advocacy in a concerted manner. At SYND, we work in 4 thematic areas: climate change, biodiversity, forestry, and then energy access. So in terms of youth inclusion in climate action, we know that stakeholders have different roles and responsibilities. We are aware of the government institutions, the private sector, the development partners, civil society organizations. So usually, it is very important that whilst we pursue our action as young people, we must also recognize these important roles of young people. So I wouldn't spend time going through all these roles of these actors, but just to run through quickly. Of course, government, has a role to play. They normally put in place the policies, the committees, and all that on climate change. So the idea is that at least one of the roles is to include young people when they are setting up some of those working groups and technical working groups. And also the private sector can also co-create job opportunities for young people. I mean, we talk about green economy and all that. So that creates a window of opportunity for the private sector to co-create, some job opportunities for young people, and also to be able to institute some financial mechanisms or schemes to fund youth-led climate solutions. Of course, the NGOs or CSOs also have a big role to play. They can also continuously build the capacity of young people on climate change, and then provide some mentorship, on youth activism or climate actions. And then also, NGOs, CSOs have their own work programs on climate change. So one way to bring young people on board is to collaborate with young people. So together, they can engage the youth in the planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of their respective activities. So that is one role we believe the CSOs can also play in ensuring that youth are actively involved in climate action. And then also, we also talk about the development partners. We also believe they can create a small grant scheme for young people to access to pursue their climate actions, and also to organize some periodic consultative meetings with young people, because donor partners usually give government resources or money to implement different environmental actions. But it will be good for them to also engage young people to seek their views and opinions on the kind of support they're giving to government, and that will also help the development partners to also assess or evaluate the kind of support they're giving to the country. And then the partners can also provide knowledge, learning, and sharing opportunities for young people when it comes to cross-cultural exchanges among young people. So young people in Africa can go to Europe, those in Europe can come to Africa, so we can all learn, the different experiences from our different geographic areas. So those are some of the roles I would believe that the development partners can bring on board to push the youth action. We also do recognize the role of the media, that the media can also include young people when they are having that climate discourse, either on radio or on television. The youth must be given the space to also share their own experience and knowledge. And also the media must also recognize and highlight the work of young people who are contributing to the fight against climate change. Even at the rural level, the grassroots level, community level, it is always important to showcase the small contribution of young people, as a way of motivating them to do more. So these are, when it comes to climate action, these are some of the roles we believe that these relevant actors bring on board. But beyond that, for today's meeting, I just want to share that even though we expect these actors to play key roles, the question is, what can young people on their own also do, what they call it, in terms of pushing the climate agenda? Being proactive, taking their own initiative. So in Ghana, we are currently implementing a project known as the Youth in Climate Action with the support of the French Embassy. So the project basically has about 4 objectives. One is to build the capacity of our youth NREL platform members on Ghana's national adaptation plan and also our nationally determined contributions. Again, we also want to empower young people as relevant actors to participate effectively in national climate change programming at all levels. So whilst we're expecting government or development partners or the private sector or the NGO to create space for young people, it means young people themselves must be prepared and ready, to be meaningful, when they are invited to the table. So this workshop, this program, or this project is to build the capacity of young people to become relevant actors when they are called to the table. And then also, this project seeks to, enhance public awareness on climate change through youth activism. And then also, this project seeks to trigger a process of developing a youth strategy for climate action. So this document basically is it's a process which is youth-led. The young people want to decide how they must be involved in climate action at all levels, the local level, the subnational level, the regional level, and then, of course, the national level. So this is, let me say, an initiative by young people, to pursue their own climate agenda. So these photos is just to highlight how we launched the campaign, different, quotes from young people to push the agenda, why youth must be included. We also have, a workshop we organize as part of the project, where we engage young people, their ideas in developing the youth strategy. And then we also, system is freezing a bit. Okay, so this slide basically is one of the meetings we had with our the Environmental Protection Agency on the National Adaptation Plan. The government of Ghana has won some readiness funding to establish or develop a national adaptation plan, almost $3 million. So as part of the process, we engage EPA, which is the agency responsible for the development of the plan. So the question is, how can young people be involved in the process? So I must say that there are 5 working groups that have been formed for this particular plan. And in each of the 5 working groups, young people are represented. So this shows that indeed young people are being considered in Ghana's national adaptation plan, and not only national adaptation plan, but also our nationally determined contributions. So as part of developing our youth strategy, we launched the whole process, I think last Saturday. So these were some of the campaigns we did as a way, as to advertise the launch of the process. So to indicate that as young people, we intend to develop our own strategy, what we want, how we want climate change to be implemented through youth inclusion. So it's about young people taking the initiative, to also push our climate agenda. So as part of the launch, we came out with some publications. These publications were actually planned and developed by young people. So if you go on our website, syndghana.org/publications, you will have access to all these publications. We have a publication on the NAP. We have a publication on Ghana's nationally determined contributions. We have a publication on C4C, that is Children for Climate Action. That's one of our flagship initiatives. We also have a publication on a policy paper on how youth can be engaged or involved, in climate action in Ghana. So all these are made by young people to influence policymakers. So you can go on our website and have a read of all these publications. So last but not the least, we are currently receiving some support from SLYCAN Trust. As I mentioned earlier on, we're developing a youth strategy for climate action. So within this period, we are in the process of developing a baseline study of the various policies and programs or some legal regulations of youth development in Ghana. And then in January, we are going to organize a consultative meeting with young people from different parts of the country to seek their views and key areas of focus, based on the baseline study that we are conducting. And then in February, also, we have additional consultative, engagements for input and comments on the draft strategy. And then again, we'll continue the, the consultation process in February to seek more views, more concerns, more comment, because we want to make it as comprehensive as possible, make it very consultative, involve more youth on this particular process. And then all things being equal, we intend to organize a physical workshop in March to validate and adopt the strategy. So this is the approach we are adopting in Ghana to showcase that young people have what it takes to contribute to climate change. And therefore, there's a need to give us space and to ensure that at least our energies, our talents, our skills are contributing meaningfully to the climate change agenda. So basically, this is just to say thank you for your attention. All right.
Thanks to Bizi, and hello to everyone on the chat who has joined us. So maybe before we go on to the next presentation by Dr. Brimley, I want to quickly share my screen for the group work. So as most of y'all know, we have some group work coming up. So we want to, of course, we do not want to assign people into groups they don't want to be a part of. So if you could, just, these are the 4 themes that we have, which are the 4 themes in which we submitted proposals. So kindly rename your Zoom name to your name, then followed by the selected the thematic group that you want to join. So for example, my name's Anafyota, and if I were to join, I will join the group on climate change and disaster risk, but I will not be joining because I do not make the cutoff mark for the age. So, kindly do so now. I will also drop all of the details on the chat. And just to let you know that the group work is not limited to only those between the ages of 18 and 30. Others above the age of 30, including myself, could join the group work. However, we would want the work in the group to be led by the youth in the group. It's fine for those above the age of 30 to be there, but please, you could contribute, and if someone asks for guidance, kindly do so, but the work in the group should be led by you. And also, please select a moderator, and if the moderator isn't presenting, also have a presenter, because we do have a report back session, like 2 minutes, and a note taker. We have some of our team members also in each of these groups who will help you through the Miro board, which is a virtual whiteboard that we'll be using. And yeah, so I'm just going to put this back on the chat, and so you could rename yourselves, and this will be the same group that you'll be using carrying forward to the next few days as well. So I'm just going to stop with that, and we're going to go back into the presentations. Thank you to BC once again, and Bradley, over to you.
I'm going to share my screen just to show you a bit of our work. Let me see if I can do that. Yep. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, looks good.
So yeah, so hi guys. My name is Bremley Lingdo. I'm the founder and CEO of Worldview Impact Foundation and also of Eco-Friend World. Both these institutions are based in London, but as you know, I'm on lockdown and I've been stuck here in Northeast India for the past 9 months. And I'm actually quite glad to be here because the whole of Europe is under serious lockdown from the impact of the COVID-19 virus. But I'm really glad that we're able to continue our deliberations and discussions using Zoom and all these social media platforms to share our stories and some positive news from our respective countries where we're working to fight climate change and engage young people in positive social action. So having said that, I want to share what we've been working on for the last decade here in the Eastern Himalayan foothills, which is a region, a biodiversity hotspot, a very special region in the world, which not many people know of. So as you know, the Himalayas are the longest range, they're the tallest range, and they're the youngest. They stretch from all the way from Afghanistan to Myanmar, Burma, across India, Bhutan, Nepal, China, and also Bangladesh gets the meltdown of the glaciers, the rivers that go from the Ganges and the Brahmaputra dumped into the big delta in the Sundarbans, which is shared between India and Bangladesh. But at Eco-Friend World, our mission is to engage young people around the world, starting from our projects in Myanmar, to plant 1 billion mangrove trees, starting from the delta region of Myanmar. So far, we've got 17 million trees planted on the ground. And our target is to have 1 billion trees, not only in Myanmar, but also in Bangladesh, in India, in Sri Lanka, in Malaysia, Indonesia, and other parts of the world that have mangrove ecosystems, including Kenya and parts of South America, in Brazil, and in Colombia, and so on and so forth. Why mangroves? So mangroves are a unique, I call it the miracle tree, because they address 6 of the Sustainable Development Goals. As you can see, goal number 1 is ending poverty of its all forms. So that's what mangroves do. They create jobs for ecosystems. They prevent floods and hurricanes and tsunamis. They also address goal number 2, which is about ending hunger, achieving food security, providing nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Then also they address goal number 8, which is to promote sustained, inclusive, sustainable economic growth for communities living by the sea in the most vulnerable areas of the world. And then their goal number 13 is about taking urgent action on climate change and its impact. So the best way to mitigate climate change is engage young people living in the coastal areas of the world in 126 mangrove harboring countries to plant billions and billions of mangrove trees to prevent climate change impacts. 14, mangroves also help to conserve and sustainable use of oceans and seas and all the marine resources. Whenever we grow mangroves, a lot of fish comes back up and the yield goes much higher by 50%, which is really great. So they help conserve the ecosystems by the sea. They provide marine ecosystem and habitat. And if we are fishermen and fisherwomen, very happy days for us to help replenish and recharge our fish stocks. Then lastly, goal number 15, which is to promote and restore and protect terrestrial ecosystems and manage our forests by combating desertification, halt land degradation, and biodiversity loss. So mangroves mangroves are on the buffer of land and sea. So while we plant mangrove trees, we also helping to prevent soil erosion from the coastline. So that's how they address all these 6 goals. So imagine 1 tree addressing 6 of the major sustainable development goals. So we have 4 ambassadors that guide us in our work globally. Jane Goodall, you know, she's an UN ambassador for peace. She works with chimpanzees in Africa and Tanzania. And then we have Dr. Sylvia Earle, who is from Mission Blue. She's the Jane Goodall of the ocean. We have Virginia McKenna, who's a famous actress or actor from Born Free. She works with big cats and animals who've been locked up in zoos, and she releases them. And that's why she started a film called Born Free from the 1960s and continues to work on helping animals in captivity in circuses and zoos to set them free. And Amun is a famous songwriter and singer from Burma, who's working with us to write songs and inspire young people in the whole world to fight climate change through music and art. So so we have a lot of events around the world to engage young people to plant mangrove trees for those living by the sea. But we also try to engage young people to plant native species of trees in the Eastern Himalayas and other highland ecosystems to prevent flood, desertification, and topsoil runoff. But the driving force between all our work is Dr. Anafyota from Norway, who is working in Myanmar on the ground. And he's an amazing journalist from the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation from back in the 60s. He's been working in Sri Lanka during the big conflict there. He was involved in the peace negotiation between the government of Sri Lanka and the fighters there in Sri Lanka. And he's now based in Myanmar, and he's 85 and still going strong. So, you know, if we look at him, he says, I cannot retire because if I don't fight climate change now, what am I going to say to my grandchildren? So bless him. He's a tremendous inspiration to our work. So talking about youth, so this year on United Nations Youth Day, we observed United Nations International Youth Day 2020, which was the 20th anniversary since I actually got the award from the UN for connecting young people from around the world to take action. And these are the kids we work with in Myanmar, where we engage them to adopt a forest, and when they plant their trees, and if the trees survive, they get an award with a little solar lamp so that they can study in the night, because there's no electricity in the projects that we work with. And this is the same where we work up in the Eastern Himalayas. So the theme for this year's United Nations International Youth Day was Youth Engagement for Global Action. And the theme was to restore the balance on the planet. So we had a great celebration from multiple countries where we talked about how to engage young people at the United Nations, how to convince the policymakers and politicians to commit to implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, and what we should do as young people to take action on the ground and not wait for politicians to make false promises and never deliver. Because young people have the power to engage at the community level because they have that spirit of entrepreneurship and engaging with little or no resources at all. So I'm very happy to be working closely with Jane Goodall, who's an amazing mentor of obviously Kofi Annan, has been a true inspiration. Bless him, the great gentleman from Ghana. He's gone now, but his legacy lives on. So on that note, we're also working on large-scale mountain ecosystem restoration in partnership with Bali Para Foundation in Bhutan, Nepal, upper regions of Myanmar, and the entire northeast, eastern frontier of India. And our goal is to plant 20 million trees and work with indigenous people on the Himalayan foothills, because a lot of clear cutting has been happening. And as you know, when the monsoon season comes, we have a lot of flash floods, and the river Brahmaputra is always bursting beyond its bank, washing a lot of embankment, and a lot of wildlife like the Royal Bengal tigers, the single-horned rhino, the elephants, deer, and many other endangered species get washed away by the rising floodwaters every summer, and millions of people get displaced and then die every year. So by restoring highland ecosystems and cloud forests, we can prevent topsoil depletion, we can have some rainwater retention, and prevent flash flood downstream, and hence also creating sustainable livelihoods for indigenous youth living in the tribal areas and indigenous belt of these mountain ecosystems right across the Himalayas. Obviously, we are fighting COVID-19, and we have to take very serious steps to maintain the protocols. But as you know, here there's no lockdown, and we can still work in the rural areas. I've been also working very closely with our farmers through the Hill Farmers Union, which is a network of right now 75,000 members just in my home state in Meghalaya. And our goal is to have 100,000 members by the end of the year. And we have created a farmers parliament to engage farmers in policy making. And we've got the cabinet of our government to have a full-fledged farmers commission that will implement policies in line with the demands and the Charter of Demands created by our first ever farmers parliament in India, held over the last 2 years in 2 cities in our state. So we have a farmers parliament, we have a farmers commission, and a farmers union. Next, we're working on a farmers bank, so we can have our own self-help groups and cooperative societies where farmers can pull in money and work like the green bank model, where each farmer can help another farmer, not waiting for government schemes again, to be independent, and build resilience by working on regenerative agriculture and agroforestry systems in the highlands, whereby we build resilience against climate change, and we address food security, and we fight the COVID-19 pandemic by providing basic essentials for the rest of the population of our country. Because without farmers, we would be dead, because there would be no more food supply chain. Even in the thick of the COVID-19 lockdown, the only basic essentials that are allowed by government authorities globally is food, because if with no food, we'll all die. So the farmers have been working very hard, even in the lockdown, to make sure that the food supply chains continue to reach the dinner tables of populations around the world. So having said that, I think we have a great opportunity to revive farming and community farms, even in the urban centers, urban gardening, whereby young people can participate in growing food in a regenerative and organic system, and fighting climate change through soil regeneration, because not only forests absorb carbon, but when we heal soils, when we regenerate soil, a lot of carbon can be sequestered through soil. We talk about soil organic carbon content, but when we use chemical pesticides and fertilizers, those soils can no longer absorb carbon. So I hope we can create a global revolution where we can work with small-scale farmers around the world and promote regenerative agriculture and agro-based systems, agroforestry systems with integrated fisheries and livestock, where we can use organic manure and bio-waste to refertilize the soil in an organic way, to recharge and regenerate. And we can create millions and millions of green jobs around the world while fighting climate change. So I want to end with a special quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, who's the chief architect of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, who said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." So this is my call to young people around the world watching our discussion, is to keep your dreams alive, even though you're very desperate and very, sad because of this lockdown. Millions of you have lost your jobs, have lost everything. But if we can go back to the land and focus on restoring the planet and the balance on earth, we can at least create some food production for our families and our loved one. So thank you very much. May the forest be with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brimley, for that presentation. And we'll be moving on to Aisha's. Just before we move on to Aisha's, I kindly request everyone to rename themselves. So if you are unsure on how to rename yourself, so you'll find your name on the participants list on the side. And if you hover over your name, you have two options. You'll have mute or unmute in your case, and then another option which says more and a drop down. So the first option under that drop down says rename. So just kindly rename yourself to your name, followed by the thematic area that you want to focus on. So with that, I've also written the 4 thematic areas on the chat, and our team members are on call to help you out if you need any help as well. And yes, the presentations can be shared if the panelists are okay with it, Daniel. Right. With that, we'll move on to Aisha. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm here from the Maldives, and I would like to share my story, sharing my journey with the key highlights. So let me first share my screen. So yeah, as I reflect on my childhood, most of my memories are with the nature, playing with the sand, climbing trees, and almost every afternoon going to the beachside to watch the waves and get the ocean breeze. I clearly remember one such afternoon where I was waiting for the adults to take me to the beachside. Someone came and gave me a wrapper, a candy, and as a child, I quickly unwrapped it and chucked it in my mouth and dropped the wrapper on the floor. One of my uncles saw me do this and told me, Aisha, if I hadn't dropped the wrapper on the floor would still be litter-free. This made a profound impact on my life. Of course, every little bit counts. I remember being keen on helping out and willing to lend a hand. So in primary school, when I became a brownie, it was such a joy. Fast forward to 2009, in September, I got this opportunity to represent the Maldivian youth at the first South Asian Youth Summit on Climate Change in Dulihel, Nepal. This was a life-changing moment for me. To my surprise, I was the only Maldivian at the summit, and being the only Maldivian, I had to do things out of my comfort zone. Up until that moment, I wasn't keen on public speaking, and going on press conferences and giving live interviews was definitely not something I expected. But I still remember how awe-inspired I was with the amazing young people I met, most of them way, way younger than me, with so much passion, fighting for climate justice, fighting for something I truly believed in. So since then, my proactive journey of sharing my knowledge about the climate change and the vulnerability of the Maldives began. In the next year, in 2010, I helped coordinate the second South Asian Youth Summit of Climate Change in Sri Lanka, where Wasita was the co-organizer, the lead organizer in it. So here we are today, still maintaining our friendship, and I still get inspired by Wasita every day. In 2010, I also co-founded the Maldivian Youth Climate Network. These are some of the pictures of our presence at a youth festival organized by the youth ministry at that time, which we wanted to encourage reuse, and hence we decorated our stall reusing materials. And you can see some of the pictures where it's not about serious stuff only. When we do serious stuff, we have a lot of fun as well. We were able to do a number of activities across the nation. This is one such activity where we got some funds by the Unicef, and which was also a coordinated effort by the Education Ministry, particularly the Education Development Center. So our mission was to revive an eco club of the northern schools, particularly Jalaluddin School of Kurudufushi School. We managed to gather the community leaders together with the members of the eco club to discuss on the challenges the community faced, to see how everyone can collaborate together for a common cause. This was another pivotal moment in my journey. I got a scholarship from NGOs to attend the COP17 in Durban in South Africa. So the NGOs and the youth movement played a really prominent role in building my capacity. And it was the amazing young people of NGOs who definitely helped me wrap my head around the climate negotiations. So when I got the scholarship, I wrote to the Maldivian government requesting for accreditation. And to my surprise, I was included in the official delegation, and I was given the pink badge, which meant I was able to access the closed door negotiations. So when I went to COP, I decided, I went a step further. Up until that time, I was closely monitoring the capacity building negotiations track together with the team of NGOs following the same track. So at COP, I asked the head of delegations if I could speak at these closed door negotiations. And yes, I did get the permission to do so. When the capacity building negotiations started, initially youth was not part of the initial text. Long story short, with a lot of mobilizing and advocacy by young people outside the closed door negotiations, and myself being able to be inside the closed door negotiations, the final text of the capacity building text included youth, which was a huge victory for NGOs. There were a lot of highlights of MYCN, the Maldivian Youth Climate Network, but unfortunately we had to discontinue due to multiple reasons. This is again another climate initiative that I co-facilitated. We encouraged people from all walks of life to come together. SAR level change. SAR is the Maldivian language, and in Maldives it means tea. So over a cup of tea, getting together, discussing on climate change, brainstorming on what we can do and how to move forward. Sadly, at that point in time, the political space and the civic space in the Maldives was shrinking, and it wasn't a safe space for many of us to continue our work. 2015 took me to the corporate world, where I was hired to be the community engagement manager of one of the luxury resorts of the Maldives. Among the many initiatives that I was able to engage the community in, this is one of my highlights, where I got the opportunity to, or let's say I was successfully able to train these amazing women to be swimming instructors. Maldives, although we are an island nation of 99% ocean, sadly, a significant proportion of our population do not know how to swim, many of them women and children. So it gives me great joy knowing that these amazing women, being swimming instructors, to till this day continue to teach many children and many others within their communities to swim. 2017, another pivotal moment in my journey, where my path crossed those advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. 2018 was another highlight, where I was requested or invited to be part of the steering committee in formulating the strategic action plan for the Maldivian Red Crescent. I was able to contribute with my technical knowledge My technical background is in environmental management with a major in sustainable development. So I was able to contribute to help them align the strategic action plan to the sustainable development goals, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai framework. The Maldivian Red Crescent Strategic Action Plan got finalized with resilience at the core and with planning for climate resilience as a key priority area. So in January last year, I decided to join the Maldivian Red Crescent formally as a member because I believe the climate crisis is now a humanitarian crisis. And in April last year, at the General Assembly, I was elected as the Vice President of the Governing Board. So now with this new leadership role, I continue to advocate for the urgency in addressing the climate crisis in formal settings, as well as in fun ways where I encourage the young volunteers to spread awareness, harnessing their creativity. Last year, I also got the opportunity to work for Unicef as a consultant, where I was required to develop a toolkit for the young Maldivians to build their capacity or to build their capacity on building resilience to address the climate crisis. I was able to pilot this in 4 island communities, and it was really inspiring to meet all these amazing young people. Young people have a lot of barriers. It's not that they don't know. Our young people do know. It's just that there are many barriers, and now myself as an adult, it is upon us to help remove those barriers, is what I believe. Sadly, the UNICEF project also was supposed to roll out this year, but with COVID-19, as you all know, all our lives turned upside down. So here I am today as a sustainability practitioner. I do have my own consultancy firm, but I also continue to do my volunteer work. My role in MRC is all volunteer. I also do a lot of other volunteer work as well. So I guess to conclude, I would like to say life is like a roller coaster ride. There are many ups and downs, but it's important to, what I've learned is that it's important to pick ourselves up. But because if we want to change something, we can't expect others to change that. It is up to us to strive to make that change. Also, to conclude, initiating climate action and combating the climate crisis can be overwhelming. If you ever feel the feeling of despair, please don't, just remember it means that you are human. It means that you are not a robot. There are many people doing amazing stuff, and I hope that this forum, you're meeting many amazing people, and this forum is life-changing for you. I hope that you are learning new learnings and also making new friends and forging new partnerships. Let me say, I met Wasita in 2009 at the first South Asian Youth Summit on Climate Change, and here we are today, still friends, and I get inspired every day by Wasita with her incredible work. So thank you, Wasita, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. That was a great story. And I met Wasita in 2009 too as a climate change activist, and here I am working for SLYCAN. So thank you, Wasita, for this opportunity and for making this happen. And thank you, Aisha, for that incredible story. I think it's always very important to see actual work come alive. We hear of policies, we hear of things being implemented, but we also need to listen to individual stories of people who made it through their journey from activists to where we are now. So thank you very much. That was very inspiring. So moving to our final presentation, we have Rafael Potselva from ProVeg International. Until Rafael comes online and turns on his camera, kindly remember to rename yourself to the group that you'd want to join. And if you have any questions for any of the panelists that you heard so far, do drop them in the chat. We do have some time for a Q&A after Rafael's presentation as well. So thank you, and Rafael, over to you.
Thank you, Senasha. Thank you, Vasita, and thank you to the SLYCAN Trust. It's always a pleasure to be there, and I have to say it's today is no different. It was very, very inspiring and humbling to hear from your experiences and like positions or like, you know, like experiences in other part of the world as well. Like ProVeg quite often have the tendency to kind of like stay in our little European world, etc. So I think it's extremely interesting for me every time to see also different perspectives from different perspectives of the world. So thank you for keeping us in the conversation. So yeah, my name is Rafael Potselva. I work for the food awareness organization ProVeg International. My title is International Policy and Public Affairs Specialist. So I mainly focus on the UN processes, agencies, and discussions, especially I would say around the UNFCCC and around the UN Environment Program. So I will try to share like a few thoughts on initiating climate action and on what we went through this year and what we can expect from next year. But first, I would like also to say a few words about ProVeg, as not all of you may be familiar with us. We are a food awareness organization based in Berlin, but we have also offices throughout Europe, in Spain, Poland, the Netherlands, the UK, and in China, the US, and South Africa. Our mission is to reduce the consumption and production of animal-based products, especially I would say industrial animal-based products in the global north. Yeah, we were founded actually a long time ago, 1872, as the Vegetarian Union back in the days already 140 years ago, 150 years ago. And yeah, we became ProVeg International with a process of internationalization. We work at different levels, from corporate outreach, that means engaging with the food industry and trying to see how they can maybe shift to less resource intensive, more climate friendly products, especially for their products in our regions in Europe, where we have like an incredibly high consumption of meat per capita. So like it's something that we do a lot. We also work on food innovation, where we opened, for example, a startup incubator 2 years ago. So innovation and plant-based innovation is a big topic that we follow. We take part in a lot of like different projects. For example, we're part of this smart protein project at the EU level that is trying to explore the potential of also traditional leguminous and like, a plant-based foods. So it's pretty interesting and has quite a lot of potential. But like we're also doing like a lot on I think what the topic is today also is like the topic of youth. We engage a lot also in schools. We engage with the next generation where we have like, for example, a school program where we cook with children in school, where we got awarded the Momentum for Change Award and at the UNFCCC in Katowice at the COP24. So this is like a big part of actually our work. I do mostly like I would say purely like policy, UN policy, and like engagement of UN institutions, but we work at quite a lot of different levels. So I think it's always interesting as we're trying to find synergies and interests with some of you that might have interesting projects. So I think it's always important to mention that. So yeah, I would like to share a few thoughts, and I will not be too long because I think we have like we still need a bit of time for discussions. But when we look back maybe at 2020 and what happened this year, I think we can say that it was not a good year. Like if we're honest, not just only because of our personal situations, and we are lucky. Like I mean, in Europe we have like in Berlin and Germany now some kind of like stronger lockdown. However, we have like some systems and safety nets that allow us, part of us at least, to cope with it. But from a climate and initiating climate action perspective, I would say it was not as good maybe as 2019, where we saw like the momentum in medias of like Fridays for Future, of like, you know, some criticism on COP, of course, etc. That was not, but at least we had a COP in 2019, and this year we see that yeah, the processes are delayed on many processes or have been delayed. So we're trying to see how we can get back on track. Getting back on track is one of the main topics that governments and like, you know, financial institutions are talking about. The idea of building forward, not only building back better, but building really differently, having some maybe different also models of production and consumption. But we see that, you know, the signs are not so much encouraging. There is a little bit more green investment, a little bit more of that, but this will not be enough to achieve like either the SDGs or the Paris Agreement or both. We know that we really need like a fundamental system change, and in our case we're working on having this like food system change as soon as possible. Still, this year allowed us, I think, to make like the connection. When we always keep in mind this idea of initiating climate action, I think that some people started also to make the link between sometimes it could be like animal welfare or like animal exploitation or like, you know, industrial livestock and like the risks of pandemics that are increased hereby. But still, I think there was like, you know, not so many great elements, progresses this year that we could mention, but there was like some also like interesting aspects, I think, in the way we see food systems in the public discussion. One report that I personally found very interesting was the State of Food Insecurity by FAO that was released in summer 2020. The numbers were, of course, like very worrying, with an increase of food insecurity, problems in food systems, the fact that they either don't feed people or make them sick with like obesity, overweight, etc. But I also saw for the first time really like, you know, there was like a really good graphic on like the potential of mitigating the impact on climate or like the costs on a health system by going for like a pesco-vegetarian, a plant-based or whatever diet. And they compared that, showing that they also like in a way accepted that more sustainable diets and probably more protein diversification is an important part of the solution. So that, I thought, was like some typical element of this year that we can take also in working on making 2021 a successful year. Yeah, 2021, this is like, you know, we're talking about initiating climate action. I think we're all looking in a way forward to 2021, to a lot of processes resuming, to hopefully getting you know, doing better with having like COVID, like in the vaccinations and the processes advanced. But I think that one of the things that we would like to do is also exchange with you if you have ideas on how to engage best, how to make 2021 count. Very open to that. We're working on that. We're working on seeing how we can make COP26 more successful. Food systems will be a big topic. I think the Food System Summit of 2021 is something a lot of us are looking very much forward to. So yeah, we're really looking also forward to exchange with you all, like on how we can like maybe also have some impact on national NDCs. And I look forward to reading the report from Ghana, for example, but like seeing how we can engage together policymakers and you know, initiate action, I would say, at the UN level, but also at the national level. So yeah, we look very much forward to work with you all on that. There's lots of initiatives I could mention. The Food at COP26, for example, that tries to increase massively the number of like plant-based options at COPs, and you know, many other useless initiatives. I would just finish by saying that it's kind of really refreshing, and it feels also like that it's probably some, you know, one element where we could have a lot of impact is youth-led engagement, because it's also like something that is gaining a lot of traction and gaining a lot of attention, I think, at the UN. So looking forward to work with you all, and thank you again for inviting us and for the great input so far. It was super interesting.
Thanks, Raphael, and thank you, panelists, for actually maybe all panelists could turn on their cameras, and thank you, panelists, for sticking to time. We do have 30 minutes that we've allocated for group work, and we actually have 2 questions to start with. So there's a question for Bremley first. We need to scroll up a bit. So could Bremley share with us the challenges encountered in empowering the farmers as government may roll out some agricultural policies to support them. So basically, I think this question is more on the Farmers' Parliament that you mentioned.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And as you know, farmers are the bedrock of every society on our planet. Without farmers, we'll have no food to eat, basically. So as we speak, a lot of farmers are demonstrating across India because of the farming policies that are, against their will and wishes. And it's very hard, even in this COVID-19 lockdown. The farmers' bill that's being passed by the Indian government is anti-farmer. And it promotes a lot of land grabbing by big corporations and so on and so forth, and squeezing smallholder farmers for a fair price. So it's really not fair. As far as the Farmers' Parliament is concerned, in our little hill state, it's unique because never before in the history of India have farmers gathered, thousands of them, to grill the officers related to agriculture, horticulture, veterinary, animal husbandry, and so on and so forth, allied products, put them on one side and ask them very tough question and come out with a resolution with all the farmers from the entire state with a whole charter of demands of what policies they want and the government to implement change. And obviously all the politicians have to take that very seriously, because farmers have finally got a voice to stand united, because before they had no voice, but the Hill Farmers Union gives them that platform to stand together united, so no one can take them for a jolly ride and squeeze them for their produce. So the chart of demand is quite comprehensive for our little state, and based on those chart of demands, the government or the cabinet had to formulate a full-fledged commission with a chairman to implement these charter of demands, a whole list. Obviously, it's going to take some time, but there's been 2 parliaments held in my state. In 2008, on the 4th of December, the first Farmers' Parliament was held in my hometown in Shillong, with more than 1,000 farmers gathered. The second Farmers' Parliament was held again on 4th December in another city, in Tura, in Garo Hills. And we're supposed to have another one this year, but we only celebrated the first ever Meghalaya Farmers' Day. And on that day, the Minister of Agriculture came. It was officially notified as the Meghalaya Farmers' Day, 4th of December. And we gave awards to all the amazing farmers from the 11 different districts in our state, representing 46 blocks or working blocks, which was really amazing. And that money actually came from farmers contributing. Not a single penny came from the government. So we're trying to build resilience whereby our farmers should stand on their own feet, get access to markets, and have agricultural policy that is farmer friendly. And then they don't have to depend on schemes and carrots provided by politicians only when they need the farmers' votes. And then they disappear and never help the farmers with broken promises. So I'm really glad that we have been able to achieve to have our own commission for the farmers. We have our own parliament for the farmers, and we have our own union. And now the next step is to have a full-fledged farmers bank where farmers can avoid taking loan from loan sharks that will keep them enslaved on their lands forever. But each farmer can pool in money through cooperative societies and self-help group and use the Grameen Bank model to provide the most lowest interest rate of bank loans as a welfare fund, and revolve that funding among the farmers group, just like the Grameen Bank. So I'm looking forward to initiating the Farmers Bank, owned by farmers, not by banks, and creating this revolution, which is grassroots and bottom up, and then scaling up the movement to the whole northeast of India and other countries in our region, in our quest to fight climate change through large-scale farmland regeneration. Thank you.
Thanks, Bremley. That was helpful. I hope that answered your question. We have a question from Zaya to Raphael. It's on the chat. What do you reckon this would mean for coastal-based countries where the soil is deteriorated, isolated from the world?
A very good question, and let me reassure you, we're also like at ProVeg, I would say we have like first of all, like two things that are also at the core of everything that we promote and that when we think about food systems. It's like on one side, food security. This is like one of the key elements for us. We're not interested about like, taking the cows away from like smallholder farmers or whatever. It's not like, we're not a 100% purely vegan club or whatever. This is not a vision. We really work on reducing, especially like in the global north, the proportion of like of meat as a protein source. This is like, I would say, your main focus, because it has to be tackled. It cannot work with 100 kilograms a year per inhabitants like in the US, especially when it's like 90 to 99% coming out of like industrial factory farming. So we have like a strong differentiation between regions. When we talk, for example, with the Ministry of Senegal at COP, or like of like other countries where they have like also fisheries, etc., we also like accept the fact that there is like more or less sustainable ways to either have livestock or like fish, etc. So this is like something we take into account. But I just also think, when I just like sort of called like soil degradation is also like, one very big impact of actually like industrial factory farming. We even see it in Germany, where we have like regions where like nitrates and a lot of like problems are caused by that. So I would say we have like a very differentiated approach. We're not about reducing meat consumption for everyone, because it's actually 50% meat reduction in the US would not be enough in other countries. It's a completely different question. So I hope I'm not dodging the question, but just saying that, it's like a kind of like, of course, like very, there's like very different contexts in different countries, and with like, meteorology and like different aspects that we have to take into consideration. And we're not promoting, I would say, a one-size-fits-all diet that would be like purely Europeanly inspired, or like, this is not like what we're interested in. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Raphael. And there's a question from Wasita. Maybe Chibizi and Aisha could answer this. What have been challenges in continuing sustained climate activities with youth, and what steps have been taken to address these? So maybe Aisha, if you're here, you could answer this first, followed by Chibizi.
Yes, thank you, Wasita, for that question. I would say one of the challenges that I have continuously seen is the lack of an enabling environment for youth to be meaningfully engaged in the decision-making processes as well. We've had a culture here in the Maldives. The culture of practice has been very much top-down approach of decision-making. And I had to say this, but to me, it is tokenistic levels of engagement, especially of young people as well as the public. So when it comes to climate change and addressing the climate crisis now, there has to be meaningful engagement of the communities as well as young people. Also, for us, climate change or the climate crisis now is very, very real, and it takes a toll on our mental health. Definitely it does. I've spoken to a number of young people. It's not, like I said before, it's not that they don't know. Our young people do know, but it's just too much to think about it sometimes. So that I think there is a lack of resources to support and provide that mental health support as well for young people who want to contribute and who want to be actively engaged in addressing the issue and finding solutions. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. Chibizi?
Well, thank you, Sani. Well, I think that some of the challenges have been that the actualizing some of the enabling environment. Interestingly, if you read Article 11 of the African Youth Charter, there's a clear provision for youth participation in the decision-making process. Even in Ghana, if you read our national youth policy, there's a clear provision for youth participation in the decision-making process, but we don't see this happening, in terms of, actual engagement. So what then is the challenge? I think one of the biggest challenges is that the policymakers assume somehow that young people are aggressive, young people are rowdy, they are too strong, too energized. That if you bring them to the table, what exactly are they going to add? What meaningful contribution are they going to bring on board? For example, if government is putting together a working committee or a technical committee, if they bring young people, what knowledge do they have? What experience do they have, to contribute to the process? So that's been one of the major, if you like, the difficulties and the challenges we've encountered. But for us, we think that we are able to turn that challenge around for our own benefit. If for nothing at all, government has a role to play when it comes to climate change, when it comes to education, awareness creation, sensitization, as enshrined in Article 12 of the Paris Climate Agreement and also Article 6 of the UN Convention. So if young people, for example, are engaging on awareness creation on social media, I mean, today you can't take out young people from social media. If you go on Facebook, if you go on Twitter, if you go on LinkedIn, TikTok, etc., they are being run by young people. So young people, that becomes a provision or a place for them to also educate their colleagues on climate change. And the other thing is that today, whether we like it or not, young people are always on the internet. So they have the resources, they have the skill, they have the expertise. How then do we use that, to the benefits of society? That, okay, if they are on social media, they are browsing all the time. How then do we capitalize on that to build a capacity on climate change and use them as change agents in the fight against climate change? So for us, we've seen the challenge and then we've turned the challenge to our own benefit. So what we are doing now is to, one, build a capacity, like I mentioned earlier on our youth in climate action. We are building the knowledge of young people on Ghana's SNAP processes, on Ghana's NDC's processes, so that we can actively participate in the process. So I think that even though we admit that there are challenges, we as young people must demonstrate or prove that at least we have something meaningful to contribute to this cause. If for nothing at all, we can use our social media platforms to create awareness. We can educate our friends at home. We can educate our family members. We can educate our church members. When we go to school, when we go to communities, those are things we can do practically as young people. So even though, yes, there are challenges, but let us take advantage of what we can do to also showcase our value in the process. Thank you.
Can I also add one more thing? I think I forgot to say how to move forward, but as in moving forward, there are a lot of challenges and a lot of barriers, but I guess one thing I've learned is that if one door closes, try not to let it get to you and make you give up. Try to seek on other ways of doing it and continue your fight. Yeah, thank you. If one door closes, many opens. That's my experience.
Thanks, Aisha. And with that, I also request Bremley, Raphael, and Chibizi to also maybe give us some closing remarks and maybe words of wisdom before we go into the group work. So maybe we could start with Bremley, Raphael, and Chibizi. Thank you.
So you want some words of wisdom? Okay,
yes.
I have two quotes I want to share from very notable personalities. They're no longer here with us. One is the youngest president ever elected to the United States, President John F. Kennedy. He was only 42 when he was elected president, and he said, "The future promise of any nation depends on the present prospects of their youth." So you know what it means, like if the young people of any nation are not involved and engaged in policy making, in holding their government and political leaders accountable for the promises they have made, that nation is doomed. The future promise of any nation depends on the present prospects of their youth. So the young people of a nation need to be engaged in holding all government officials and the machinery accountable for the policies they make, because they are going to be the people who will carry the policies ahead for generations and generations to come. So what our brother just mentioned from Ghana is very important. Young people have been just tokenistic lip service, you know, little dolls put in delegations and so on and so forth, make them feel good. But at the end of the day, if young people are not supported as real partners on the ground when they go back to their respective countries, it means nothing, because they need to be equal partners now. They should have been, like, for the last 20 years in all the COP negotiations, in all the General Assembly resolutions and so on and so forth, because there's more than 3.5 billion people on the planet under 25 years of age. That's more than half of the human population. And most of them, 70% of them, live in developing countries. They never have a voice. Second quote is from the famous Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill. He said, "You make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give." So as young people, we should also remember that we can give. It's not just about money. If you have a little skill, you have a little idea, you have a little words of wisdom, you can share. You can give your time, because time is more precious than money and than gold. And every second matters. That's why they say timing is everything. And the time to act for us was like yesterday. So now is the time to really engage at a global level. So thank you very much, guys. May the forest be with you always.
Thanks, Brimley. Raphael, maybe in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll close in 1-2 minutes. I would say, you know, like, we know that food systems account for around 29% of, you know, global greenhouse gas emissions, with livestock alone between 14.5 according to FAO to around 16 in latest, like, other reports. So we know the emergency of, like, tackling that. We know that despite this around 15% of global greenhouse gas emission, less than 1% of the budget that is allocated every year to fighting climate change or mitigating climate change goes to food systems. So we know very well that, you know, this topic that we are, like, focusing on, sustainable food systems, has been vastly underrepresented and not really been, like, tackled at the table seriously. I think this is changing in the past years. We see it at the different COPs. We see it at, you know, in the medias, in the way the media presents also this possibility to take action through our personal diets, through, like, you know, what we do every day. So I think there is, like, some progresses that have been made. Challenges about youth, I wouldn't say that there had so many, like, just to jump back on the question before. I think it's been extremely refreshing. There is, like, also, like, some kind of straight talk. Sometimes it's a little bit, like, you know, challenging with other colleagues to see how we can have a little bit more differentiation and a little bit more, like, you know, kind of like being a little bit more balanced according also to regions, according to age groups, according to a lot of things. But overall, we need to talk a little bit more, you know, go straight to the point. There is a climate emergency. We need to take action. So I would say I'm pretty hopeful that 2021 will also be a good year, and that we can also benefit from the youth engagement at the different levels, because we've been sleeping around for too long, and I think it's really time to do something clearly. Thank you.
Thanks, Raphael. Chibizi, we end with you.
Yes, thank you very much, Sunny. And I think that Brimley and Raphael have virtually said everything. Just to add that we cannot talk about sustainable development without consciously and actively bringing young people on board. In the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, I mean, young people today will be the ones in the helm of affairs. So the earlier we engage them, the earlier we build their capacity, the better for us, you know, in the fight against climate change. And let me also add that as young people, let's not only rely on government or other stakeholders to give us opportunity. Let's also be proactive. Let's also take our future into our own hands and demonstrate that at least the little resources we have, we can use those resources to cause change to happen. So that if we have more resources, we can bring bigger change and then see the kind of world we want to have. So to say a very, you know, should I say good afternoon or good evening to everyone whilst we stay on course to look at the other work groups. Thank you very much once again.
Thanks, Chibizi. And I'm just going to share my screen once again on a couple of points that you could keep in mind while getting into your groups. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all 4 speakers. I think it's been a very enlightening and actually an interactive session. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions and participated in the chat, and thanks to everyone who joined us from Facebook. Just a quick note to those who are logging in from Facebook, we'll be ending the stream now, as we'll be breaking out into thematic groups. So thank you for joining us, and hope you could join us again tomorrow. So thank you once again for the speakers for taking time, for continuously giving us your support and encouraging us, and for sharing your stories. So with that, I have assigned you all into breakout rooms. You all will get a little pop-up box that tells you to join a room. Please do join that, and you will have group work for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, we'll come back here for a report back session. The report back doesn't have to be elaborate. It could be 2 to 4 minutes, if at all. Remember that this is the same group that you'll be working forward with for the next few sessions as well. So we're sending you all into groups in 2 seconds.